My name is Alan, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Sound Support Podcast. This is episode 1. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about sound until you click off. What a great intro, right? That's fine. That's the way it's going to be. Me casual, not shaven. Sometimes, who knows, I might shave. It depends on how lazy I'm choosing to be. During COVID-19, I'm being pretty lazy because I'm non-essential. We'll see how non-essential that I am when everyone in the world wants to watch television next year and there's not enough content. Regardless, let's talk about sound, starting with the news. When I say news, I mean, of course, SoundSpeed's news. And first order of business, I finally launched soundspeeds.us, which is the website for SoundSpeeds. If you go to it, it's very bare bones and basic right now, but it will get better in time. It's kind of been a soft launch and it's been there for a couple of weeks, but what can I say? At least it's online. If you watch my studio upgrade videos released in early 2020, then you know already that I had planned to replace the pop filter in front of my vintage Cat Equitech E100 and replace it with a Stedman ProScreen XL. I've been a big fan of Stedman for a long time, and I reached out to them and said I would love to include one of your pop filters in my new studio setup. Well, because of COVID-19 and because I went through them directly and not paying for it, they did have a delay in shipping it to me because of the whole COVID-19 mess. But it finally arrived, and I'm very happy to be including this. So this falls under news because I'm going to be including it in my videos in the future, so it should be a little bit better fidelity because it's not going to be that mushy windscreen that pop filter thing that I don't like. So I'm happy about getting this in there. Now, in the care package they sent me also a couple of other things, and you might know them for their pop filters, but I'm going to at least share these things with you because I think they're pretty cool. You're not familiar, perhaps, with that Stedman made things like the headphone hanger, but they do. If you have a desk that you use in a vocal booth or an editing desk, this thing can secure to any one of those. You simply screw it onto whatever surface you want, and it will hold your headphones. These things come in handy. The next thing they sent me, and well, this is the last thing they sent me, is a studio connector cleaning kit. Now, I was not familiar with such a thing that was made by them. Now, they have 2 different kits, as I understand it, that they're selling. And one of the things I think is really cool is that this little kit right there is designed for you to actually repair inside of connectors as well. So you can use their little tool and then put one of these little foam type insert things in there and then spray it with, if you watch my video on cleaning XLR connectors and cables, you know that my favorite material in the world for cleaning such things is deoxit, and they like it too, so much that they included a sample of it in their kit. So you can put it on one of these and clean out the inside of a 1/4 inch or 6.35 millimeter connection jack. It looks just like that. One of these little pads in here can also be used for the outside, but you can also insert it directly on the inside as well. And it even comes with little 1/10 of an inch or whatever that is in millimeters in order to connect and clean the inside of an XLR connector as well. And it will also do 1/8 of an inch or what is that in millimeters? I'm terrible at this. 3.5, something like that. Anyway, there you go. This little bitty kit right here I thought was extremely clever. It's got some cool tools to it, and I'm very interested in trying it out. I'm putting links to all these products in the description if you'd like to check them out. The last piece of news is that I've set up an email address, ssp@soundspeeds.us, directly for answering your sound-related questions. I receive a lot of sound-related questions because people are always looking for some sort of tech support for free. And so, to put it in the words of Andrew Scott from Podcastage, might as well exploit their questions for content. And I'm going to be doing that in upcoming episodes of this podcast. And the reason why is because I'm quite often asked the same questions over and over again, which is one of the reasons why I started SoundSpeeds to begin with, to actually produce videos to help answer questions that I constantly get in the real world. So instead of me saying, oh, I just got through answering this question, here's the answer again, I could say, here's a video that answers all your questions, watch it, and then come back and ask any questions if you don't find that they were answered in the video. And that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be doing on this channel going forward with regards to answering support-related questions. So if it's something that could benefit other people, I will be putting that in future episodes of this support podcast. But without further delay, let's get into your questions. Question number 1, Robert asks, I hope this note finds you well. When purchasing wireless transmitters, I encounter the following. Please indicate in the comment field whether you would like transformers in Block A, 470 to 548 megahertz, or Block B, 518 to 608 megahertz. Feel free to mix and match which block is best or least worst. Great question. The best way for me to answer this is by me asking you what your resources are. For example, do you have access to an RF Explorer? If you do, scan the areas that you're going to be most likely shooting in, especially if you're doing something like YouTube and you have a certain number of locations that you usually shoot at. If you can scan those areas, then find out what frequency range is going to be most clear. Now, if you're going to be in a particular city environment, a big metro area, in that case, then you might consider going on one of the professional sound forums and asking other people that live in your area, what block should I invest in? Which is clearest in this area? And you'll probably have some people saying, oh yeah, in your area, it's going to be this and this and this. I would buy in block B if I were you. So that's what I would recommend. If you are interested in scanning yourself and finding out what you're going to want to do for your wireless coordination, then perhaps the RF Explorer module, which is a handheld unit that does a big variety of frequencies, is a great unit to go for. I think they're around $300 or so. I'll put a link down in the description if you'd like to check it out. But there you go. That's your answer. Ask a pro or scan yourself. That's the best way to find out. Question 2, Tech We Love asks, is the interface you use in this video superior in sound quality compared to the Scarlett Solo? Are there any technical specs that tell you whether an interface has a bigger range? Well, this is a fun question because I use in all my recordings a Sound Devices Mix Pre 6, and compared to a Scarlett Solo, it blows it out of the water. I mean, it's one of those things that's almost hilarious to even mention. Now, before I even give you your answer, I'm going to tell you this did come from a question asked in a video that I did on EIN. But it was too good of a question not to at least put it in this first episode of the SSP. So I thought I would do that. But I'm not going to be doing that in the future. Use the email address I mentioned before if you have a question. Now, is the Sound Devices Mix Pre 6 better than the Scarlett Solo in every single possible way? First of all, the Scarlett Solo is a very inexpensive, but good for the money, don't get me wrong, USB audio interface only. It has a couple of dials, it provides a certain amount of gain, it allows you to get pretty good results. But it is not a Sound Devices product that has a very complex piece of firmware integrated in there that does all kinds of things, like, for example, pre-rolls. When you press a record button, it could already have been recording for a few seconds, and so it will automatically basically start recording a few seconds before you press that. So if you're waiting for something to start, for example, and you don't have to sit there with your finger on the button and wait for the exact second. If you have a pre-roll set up, you can very easily wait for them to start talking, then you hit the record button, and you've gotten a few seconds from the beginning of the show or whatever you're doing with it. That is one example. There are tone generators built in. There's time code you can use. There is various different types of settings that you can choose directly from that. You can take it on location and remotely power it, either through the USB-C or you can self-power it through a battery, backup system. It is better in every possible way. It's cleaner. It's got cleaner preamps. It's made by a company that makes premium sound gear, for example, and they specifically made it for being used as an audio interface and a field recorder. It's being used as a field recorder on many shows right now because it is that good. The preamps on this unit go all the way up to adding 76 decibels of gain, and it is extremely clean with a very low EIN. So is it better than the Scarlett Solo every single day of the week and twice on Sundays? I would not recommend in any way the Scarlett Solo over the Sound Devices Mix Pre 6. However, you're going to be paying for it. The Scarlett Solo you can probably get for around $125, $130. The Sound Devices Mix Pre 6 will be in the upwards realm of maybe $850 to $900. You pay for that quality and you will hear a difference. So is it better? Absolutely. Now, is there a spec that tells you whether an interface has a bigger range? Maybe look for example, gain. Gain will tell you what range that basically it can provide gain-wise. It's not going to tell you how much it can maybe be boosted in post, how clean the preamps are. It's not going to tell you the coloration or anything. Most of them try to be pretty clean, but I will tell you this, there's not really a spec for that because a company would not want to tell you, well, our stuff is pretty clean, but not as clean as theirs. It's not going to tell you that. It will probably maybe tell you the EIN. if it wants you to know about that. If it's a bragging right for them, like many companies, including Focusrite, they usually have pretty clean low EIN. So I would definitely say look into something like the Focusrite Scarlett that you mentioned here, the Solo, if you are looking for a pretty budget-based entry-level interface. But if you want to jump in and record directly on a unit that you don't even have your computer on for, you don't have to worry about those fans, the heat, and everything else. You can record directly on a little recorder. That would be a Sound Devices Mix Pre 6, 3, or 10T. They are great units. I highly recommend them. So there you go. Question number 3, Nathan asks, can you maybe do a SoundSpeeds video where you share your experience in setting up blimps? For example, what kind of balance do you like? How do you know when you need to shift the lyre clips? The technical information on what can be adjusted is in the manual for this thing, but none of the useful experience is in the manual. Maybe a whole series, not like the 3BO, but more like, so you're gonna just got your first XYZ. How do you set it up? Well, it's actually very simple. So I thought I would do it in this episode. How do you set up a blimp? Well, there's a few main things to keep in mind. For example, you want to listen as you're setting it up. Now, I'm using a DPA 4017B in a Rycote shock mount that's specifically made for this microphone. If you notice, this cable is already at a fixed length. Personally, I think it's too long. The reason I say that is because when you stick it inside of the actual blimp itself, which is right here, then you're going to notice that the cable is actually too long. Now, I'll show you what I mean by that in a second, but how do I like to balance them? Well, let me show you my technique that I've actually talked about in a couple of my videos. If I'm doing a regular setup and balancing a shock mount, usually what I will do is I will hook up the cable like I have right here, and I will find the balance point. For the DPA 4017B, it's right here, and then I would drop it perfectly centered between the two lyres if they're identical. If this is a shock mount more like for a long shotgun microphone, you may need more support on the front, and therefore you would upgrade. I think there's the 62, 72, and 82 tension suspension tensions for the bows that are used on the lyres, and I think you have to buy those separately. Now, I just got through messing it up, so let me find the balance point again. Right there in the middle. So I would go right here and drop it in place. Now, some of these microphones will have a built-in high boost, like for example on this DPA 4017B. It does have a high shelf that allows you to get a little bit more of the higher end frequencies, the presence and air that you would normally run into seeing diminished by a Zeppelin. Now, when you're setting them up, first of all, you want to make sure that it is set in there properly and not clicking. That right there is because I'm being extremely aggressive with it. However, I will say this. It would need to be centered as well. So you can see here, there is a little line that would slide into the front of the Zeppelin. Now, if I slide this all the way in place, you can see that the microphone is not going to be perfectly centered when I put the front and back of the microphone on there, or the front and back of the Zeppelin on there. So what I'm going to do is even it out. The reason why is because you want to have an even amount of air all the way around your Zeppelin. So it looks like I need to shift it forward in order for this to happen, but alas, I have a little tidbit of knowledge for you. If I do this, check out what happens. It centers out pretty nicely. So it actually evens out as soon as you go vertical with it, which means that it's pretty well balanced in that shock mount. So I will go ahead and throw this on there. But you notice, look at this, the cable is sticking out. This is why I say it's a little on the long side for my taste. Now, there's various different places that you can secure it on the inside, but one thing you do not want to do is have it secure anywhere that is going to basically negate the fact that it is a suspension. See this right now? It's pretty well balanced. It looks kind of floppy, but believe it or not, it's not when you go vertical with it. See what I mean? It's pretty solid. However, what do I do with this cable? If I were to take this cable and loop it up inside of the lyre bow, that's bad because I'm basically transmitting all of this wiggle directly into the shock mount. And therefore, anytime this thing moves, it's going to be changing it directly into the microphone and transmitting it directly into the microphone, which is not what you want to do. Now, you can use a little zip tie, like I have some little tiny zip ties, and add a little, loop or something down there in order to take out some of that tension. And that's personally what I would say do. Now, if you don't have one of those, or if it breaks in the field, one of the things I've done in the past is I've kind of spiraled it around a little bit, making sure that it doesn't touch the lyre bows there. So I'll at least show you how to do that in this video, even though it's less than ideal. See that right there? If I were to go vertical with it, it's spiraled around. It's not ideal, but at least it's not going to touch the inside of the Zeppelin when I do that. So right here, it actually is touching it. So what I would need to do is turn this microphone ever so slightly around, rotate it around there just a wee bit. That way, now you can't really tell it, but this cable is no longer touching the lyre on the inside. It would actually be suspended. Now, in order for it to be final, I mean, honestly, I don't like that at all. I would definitely use a zip tie on that. But as I mentioned before, you have to listen. So I would say, listen to this and see what points of noise there is going to be. So if you secure this down, but with a little zip tie, like for example, if I just tied this back down here, you're not going to be able to zip tie it around the bottom. But on this outer bow right there, you could probably put one of those really, really thin zip ties. Or if you wanted to, use fishing line, something like that, that ties it off very, very low profile. And in that case, I would want to rotate this back. There you go. So if this is secure on the inside, it's very low profile and that microphone is not going to go anywhere. Now, you hear that shift, that little bit of plastic right there touching the rubber? The reason that's happening is because it is not yet inside of the Zeppelin. Now, I want to show you this little piece of information as well, because there is a way to take the cable through from the inside of the Zeppelin to the outside, and it's got to follow that in that little groove, because if it doesn't, it's not going to fit correctly and it could introduce noise or not allow you to secure it correctly. The big thing that I see a lot of novice people not doing is tightening this right here, these little screws at the bottom. When you tighten these, it will actually lock in the Zeppelin itself to the shock mount, and that's critical. So when you go vertical with it, you would want to shake it around and listen before you put these little bits on there. And if you hear any sound, then you're going to want to find out what that sound is and address it directly. Now, this little cable here that routes on the outside of the lyre would typically be on the other side. If you notice that you have the little suspension lock, which controls the angle of the Zeppelin. This is locked and on the opposite side from right here. Now, I would actually probably rotate this around, which I think I did this only because I needed to fit inside of this one container for my DPA bag, but I would usually rotate this around to the back. And then I would use these little bitty, clips that are designed to hold that cable and hold it nice and snug and secure. Because if this is in the back, or rather probably in the front, because you see which way the cable wants to route, it wants to route through here and into something like this connector, then I would do it that way. If it wants you to do it, then, just common sense would tell you to do it that way. Now, this doesn't really bother me, let the truth be known, simply because there's not a whole lot of tension there and it's not going to hit anything as well. But regardless, I would listen to this, plugging it up, and see if there's anything that really stands out as being bad about it. If I hear clicks, then I would address those. And you have to look for places where it would move. For example, right now, the shock mount is indeed one big place where it would move. And so if I'm looking at it right here and trying to go with it this way, I'm going to say, because I've already adjusted it, like if I had the tension on the lyre, then I would say, well, geez, this isn't any good because this cable is touching the side of the Zeppelin. That's going to be introducing a lot of noise. So I would need to address that using something like a zip tie or something that is low profile. So there you go. Listen with your ears and identify, because you know that if you move it a little bit and there's some sort of a clicking noise, look for the parts that move, touching the parts that are stable. That's usually where your noise is going to be, depending on the kind of noise. If you're using some sort of an elastic band or some sort of a silicone ring or something like that in a shock mount, and it makes kind of like a guitar string type bong sound, then chances are then you have too much tension in it and you need to loosen it up a little bit, because you don't need to route it so many times around in a spiral, because basically the more tense a string is, or not a string, a rubber band is, the more tension you have on it, the more it basically becomes a guitar string, and you don't want to do that. It's not necessary to hold a microphone unless you're planning on being aggressive with it. just a couple little twists of it, it's going to hold it just fine. Now, on some of the other shock mounts that you run into, and Zeppelins like the Sinella ones, you want to be very careful about the way you assemble it. Here's one thing I will always tell you. When you buy a new piece of gear like a Zeppelin, if it's something you're not familiar with and have the training for, or have already used and know how to use it, don't be afraid to ask. Because a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm a sound person, I know how to do this stuff. You might not. There's little tricks on every one of these devices. If you use a Cyclone, there's little tricks you need to use. If you use the modular system from Rycote, there's little tricks you need to do. With the Sinella Cozy, little tricks you need to know. Every single one of them is different, but it all boils down to listening and looking for the parts that move, touching the parts that do not move. Make sure your cable is routed so that it's not going to non-strain relief the shock mount. It's going to actually provide a good shock it's going to resist. Don't pull it so that there's so much tension that it basically, right now, like if I secured it right there, this is a very straight line. That's going to transmit a lot of noise. Make sure you have some slack and some play. That way it will be more relaxed. Use your common sense with regards to setting up, but the main key point that I cannot stress enough is listening. That will help you set up a Zeppelin more than anything else. But if you have any questions, make sure you ask the manufacturer or ask the company that you bought it from to give you a lowdown. Or of course, look online for some sort of a video setting it up. Question number 4, final question. Hey, Alan, here's some fun ones for the podcast. Cheers, Phil. Somewhat for the podcast. Well, Phil is a member of my Discord server. If you want to join, there are links down in the description for you to join my Discord server. However, I will tell you this, he was talking about sound-related memes and wanted to get my thoughts on some that he had seen. So if you have sound-related memes you would like to see my reaction to, by all means, send them to me and I will laugh, cry, joke, whatever the thing entails, explain even. And we're going to do that here. Now, I have tried very, very carefully not to look at these in advance. I do kind of see them out of the peripheral vision as I'm saving them, but I did not read the comments or anything on them, and I don't know what they say or anything. So here we go. Number 1. Okay, this is a meme, I guess. It says, this shows me in the upper left-hand corner, Curtis Judd in the upper right-hand corner, Kevin Basic Filmmaker in the lower left, and Michael Wynn from the Michael Wynn YouTube channel in the lower right. And Podcasters is asking, okay, silly question for Kevin. What do you think a viable exit strategy for the Middle East would be? Kind of interesting to be a meme. This is really cool. I mean, it was a live stream that we did where we were all cutting up and just joking around. This was a live stream that I did with these guys. It originally started off with Michael Wynn, and then we added the other guys too, because Curtis Judd was in the comment section, and we jokingly said, hey, you want to join too? Once he joined, we just decided to add other people in here and ask them to join. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. So I guess this isn't really so much of a meme as just a quick little cool thing and a reminder of something from the past. Kind of fun. Graham Tobias. Every audio engineer is staring at this thinking they can solve the pandemic with 2 filters. Okay. Oh, I see. It's kind of like a frequency response curve type thing. And it's funny you say that, because every single time I see some sort of a curve and then it goes up on the tail end, I always look at it and say, oh, that's presence. There's a car dealership near where I live where I bought one of my cars, actually 2 of our cars, and it has this line that then goes to a wavy. And every time I look at that, I say, oh, that looks kind of like the SM7B frequency response. Kind of cool. So they're being a sound geek. We can't afford your boom up, but we can give you a PA. Yeah, if only a boom operator was someone that was holding a pole. Yeah, that would be it. But a boom operator, if you watch my 3BO series, you know that a boom operator is far more than just someone that holds a pole. He says he can't afford a boom op for you. 2 full red packages, a Steadicam, and a drone show up on location. Yeah, that is so true. People will spend and blow, I should say, their entire budget on camera-related stuff. Why is that blowing? Because sound is half of the experience of watching a movie. If I throw a punch and it doesn't make the right sound when it's supposed to connect, or it makes absolutely no sound at all, you're going to say, well, that just missed. And if it makes a little sound like that as opposed to a whack, like a big smack sound, it doesn't sell properly. Someone falls off of a building and hits the ground and it doesn't make a big, smack bone crushing, head hitting the concrete type smell or sound, then you're not going to, it's not going to sell. If it just makes kind of a little pop noise, you're going to be like, geez, that doesn't sell at all. Sound is part of the experience too, and you need to budget for it, because I don't know how many times I've been approached about if I can fix something or what do I recommend for someone who did not prioritize sound. And then all of a sudden they get into post and they realize that on their no budget show, it's now been shelved because they spent all their money on camera related stuff and not anything on sound. That's why the very first video I ever did on sound speeds was indeed this one tip could save your show, or whatever I call the thing. Link right there. You can check it out. But that is absolutely true. And that's a wrap. False is the beginning of a 2-hour load out from third floor location on top of a hill. Oh, geez, isn't that true? I mean, you'll be shooting on a location, the sun goes down, they say, well, we lost the light, it's time to get out of there. And you're up on top of a hill and you have to wrap out in the dark. And then you have to load up to a stake bed that takes you back to your trailer. Or you're on the third story of a building and you have to all fight for position on a freight elevator. That is very, very true. And it's not funny at all. When do they understand that audio is important in post? Oh, that is so correct. So many times do first-time filmmakers realize that when it's too late. And suddenly they have ADR to do because they didn't prioritize sound. And then they say, well, geez, I now have to do complete sound design from the ground up. And they realize that the entire budget of their entire movie has completely gone out of control. And they don't have the money to fix sound in post. And it's very critical. Might as well just do a silent movie like The Artist by that point. Please, can we do a wild track? Sound kid. It's almost lunchtime. They can fix it in post. That's very true also. All you need to do is record a wild track of what it sounds like on a location for Walla Walla or what have you. And they don't want to do it. They say, no, we used all our time to shoot and we got to pack up before lunch and we don't have time to do that. They'll figure it out in post. I feel sorry for post sometimes. You can't defeat me. That's an ear. Inside of an ear. That's actually, I think, a diagram that I used in one of my videos too. I know, but he can. 20th Century Fox over the front of, I guess that's Thor's face, and then Lucasfilm THX. Okay. I don't exactly understand that one. Maybe somebody will, though, and can tell me in the description below what that means. Types of grips. Key grip, or first company grip, the boss or head of the grip department, best boy grip, or second company grip. Okay, so this is about grips. Grip right hand man. Okay, so this is the person, yeah. Third grip, the company grip, usually on set. Construction grip on soundstage, okay. Dolly grip, oh, I see where it's going. Sound grip at the bottom. A grip responsible for moving a mechanical microphone platform is occasionally referred to as a sound grip. Pay for this position is traditional $10 a day Canadian. Now, this is actually a joke. In the Los Angeles Times, there was an article a couple years ago where someone said, and the sound grip is holding the microphone. And we were like, in LA, you're going to call a sound mixer a sound grip. That's hilarious. And so we kind of all laughed and made fun of it. It became a meme at that point amongst the sound community saying, there's now a sound grip. And then we'd say, well, a sound grip doesn't get paid nearly as much as a sound mixer or a boom operator or a sound utility does. And we started jokingly, I don't even know where it came from, as $10 a day. And now I love that they added Canadian. So that means it takes it to the next level. I've actually got a shirt that says Sound Grip Local 10 on it. Here's a picture of me wearing it right there. It's a lot of fun to joke about different things regarding sound, and there's a lot of war stories. That's all of them. So there you go. If you have a meme that you would like me to look at and talk about or show in an upcoming video, by all means, let's make memes a thing that we do on this podcast. So there you have it, the very first episode of the Sound Support Podcast. And if you have either a text-based question, an audio question, or a video question you'd like to send me, please send them to ssp@soundspeeds.us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in, and you're going to enjoy this outro.
If you'd like to ask a sound-related question to be answered in a future episode, send text, audio, or video to ssp@soundspeeds.us. Want to record this outro? Fine! Take my job from me. Details in the description down below. Find us on social media and online at www.soundspeeds.us. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more sound-related content.